by the way, the IMF, the World Bank, intimately tied with U.S. empire. The U.S. military even admitted in documents that were published by WikiLeaks that they're financial weapons of the U.S. military, the IMF and the World Bank. Yeah.
So
now what they're doing instead, by reimagining them, is that they're taking U.S. empire out of it and they're having it basically be a direct weapon of the bankers. So instead of the bankers like buying up U.S. politicians and influencing U.S. empire and getting what they want that way, they're reimagining it to basically create this new economic system that we've seen bits of over the past few years. The idea of programmable, surveillable money, and also this idea of a voluntary carbon market. The goal of which is to have it be voluntary in name only, not unlike digital ID and all of that stuff.
In a recent interview on the Jimmy Dore podcast, Whitney Webb, a veteran columnist and researcher, discussed the intentions of the elite class regarding the general population. According to Webb, these elites have come up with a strategic plan to gain control over all assets while simultaneously introducing carbon credits, possibly in the disguise of environmental conservation. She emphasized that this strategy represents only the beginning, suggesting that more elaborate schemes may be in the works. Webb expressed particular concerns about the implementation of carbon credits, focusing on the potential consequences for landowners. She explained that while individuals may own land, they may not have ownership rights over the associated carbon emissions and other resources, effectively devaluing the land. Showing the same patterns of historical financial scandals, such as the junk bond debacle of the 1980s, Webb cautioned that familiar figures might utilize similar manipulative tactics again. Webb analyzed the long-term consequences of such maneuvers. She predicts a future where central bank digital currencies become widespread, gradually removing personal freedoms and subjecting individuals to increased surveillance. With these scenarios, Webb feared that daily life would be closely monitored and regulated. We will now show you clips of Whitney Webb as she reveals more mind-blowing observations about this current possible financial scandal. If you are enjoying the video, consider giving us a like and show your support by subscribing to the channel to be updated on more crypto news. Thanks, and enjoy.
If you want to know more about this, you can look at the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero that was created by Mark Carney and Mike Bloomberg, which somehow the UN decided were the best people for the job of saving the planet. They're in charge of climate finance for the United Nations. The stop and frisk New York mayor billionaire from Salomon Brothers, Mike Bloomberg, and the former head of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada and former Goldman Sachs guy, Mark Carney. That's who's saving the planet for the UN. They're the ones reimagining this, the whole multilateral development banking system. And part of this involves this carbon market play where the World Bank, along with Google and some other actors, are developing climate wallets. They're designing it. It's designed to run on, I believe, the Chia network, which is the guy that invented BitTorrent, his new project. And they claim to be sort of like a net zero blockchain, I guess. And basically the idea of it is for people to participate in the carbon market to come. And the idea of people being able to sort of like monetize nature. And there's a whole lot of stuff going on with carbon credits and carbon markets right now. And it's a very murky legal area. And I'm very concerned about it because there's this whole mentioned but relatively unexplored issue of so-called carbon rights, where the person that buys the carbon credit can get rights to the carbon in the forest the credit represents. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like, I buy a carbon credit in this forest, this Colombian rainforest, and now I am potentially the owner of the carbon in those trees, so I can decide what happens to that carbon. And the people that actually like own the land are like Colombians, they don't necessarily own it anymore, potentially. This is like this murky gray area, so it's opening the way up, I think, to some land grabs in the global south. So a lot of very disturbing things happening in carbon market land. And even under the idea of, reducing CO2 levels and all of that, the carbon market as it's been functioning, just hasn't done that. It's been criticized by people on the left and the right. And then there's been time and time again, it's been revealed by even mainstream media that up to 90% of all carbon credits on the market right now are completely worthless and meaningless. So it's basically like the junk bond scandal of the 1980s again. And what's interesting is that the person that invented carbon markets and carbon credit trading is a guy named Richard Sander, who worked at Drexel Burnham Lambert, the junk bond scandal bank of the 1980s. He was a senior vice president until he was brought in by the George Bush Sr. administration to apply free markets to environmental issues for Bush Sr.'s EPA, and then was contacted by this like Rockefeller oligarch guy who was at the UN named Maurice Strong to develop the same solution for carbon. And he's also the father of derivatives of financial futures, which of course helped explode in 2008. So the guy that invented all of that is the guy that invented carbon credit trading, and he also wants to make a market just like that for free water and free air, so you can, get basically taxed on that too. I think a lot of this we're going to be seeing going forward, this push to have economically destabilized countries in Latin America turn towards dollar-denominated stable coins. Like that's happening in Argentina, for example, because of like the issues with the peso there and how it's been devalued so much, even under Malay. People are flocking to dollars essentially, but like stable coins, either like Tether USDT or Circles USDC. And this whole crypto ecosystem in Argentina is pretty much, largely managed by this one particular network that's intimately tied to the satellite company I was talking about. They're all tied up with this group called Endeavor, which Endeavor has an Argentina branch. They have branches really all over the world. They're based in the United States. Their board is chaired by Edgar Bronfman Jr. of the Bronfman family, which, if you're familiar with my books, is intimately tied to organized crime and basically the people behind Justin Trudeau. And another person on their board is Reid Hoffman, who's the co-founder of LinkedIn, who was a member, part of the so-called PayPal mafia. And probably the closest person in Silicon Valley to Jeffrey Epstein. Reid Hoffman is a big funder of Democrat causes and the Democrats, but other members of the quote unquote PayPal mafia are very much supportive of Trump. For example, Peter Thiel was a big force on Trump's transition team. People that worked very closely for Thiel and Thiel's Palantir basically directed all the early policy decisions and appointments of Trump's Department of Defense. And there's been a lot of connections, I think, still between PayPal mafia and Trump. And you have someone like Elon Musk also sort of posturing publicly anyway as a libertarian and sort of in that right populist camp. So I think this particular network has people who sort of play to both sides of the political machine, which is frankly, if you want to get lots of lucrative government contracts, that's what you do.
According to Whitney, the primary goal of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero is to rally the financial sector behind the transition to a net zero economy. This effort is an interpretation of the multilateral development banking system. One notable initiative involves the establishment of carbon markets, with key players such as the World Bank and Google collaborating to develop climate wallets. These digital platforms are designed to streamline transactions related to climate finance, promoting transparency and efficiency in the management of funds and investments aimed at addressing climate change. However, there are concerns surrounding carbon credits, particularly regarding carbon rights. This concept involves those purchasing carbon credits gaining control over the carbon in the designated area, potentially leading to land grabs and disputes over ownership. Additionally, the effectiveness of carbon markets in reducing CO2 levels has been questioned, with many credits deemed worthless. Interestingly, the concept of carbon markets originated from Richard Sandor, known for his involvement in the junk bond scandal of the 1980s. Sandor's vision extends to creating markets for other natural resources, such as water and air, posing further regulatory and ethical issues. Here are more clips of Whitney Webb explaining more reasons as to why she believes that this financial movement is not for the preservation of the environment.
Frankly, it's hard to know where we will be, but I think it's pretty clear that there's certain efforts to push people in a particular direction. So, I think it's been clear for a long time, and as I'm sure you're aware, there's a push to onboard everyone to a digital ID system. Vaccine passports during COVID were a big part of this. But there's been all sorts of pushes for it. For example, WorldCoin, Sam Altman, scan your eyeball, get a unique digital ID in a wallet you can have tokens in. People in the global south that they're basically being bribed to give up their biometric data for the guy that runs OpenAI with Microsoft and stuff. There's these digital ID initiatives are consistently tested on vulnerable stateless people, but the goal is to have it rolled out globally and to have it be interfaced with a digital wallet where the money is programmable and surveillable. So a lot of people have been talking about CBDCs, central bank issued digital currency. But there's also going to be digital currencies just as surveillable and programmable that are issued by the private sector and the Wall Street banks. And that isn't being talked about enough. Right. So one of the stable coins I mentioned earlier that people in Argentina are being rapidly onboarded to because their currency is being destroyed, Tether recently onboarded the FBI and Secret Service to its platform.
Jesus.
So everyone that uses Tether gets to use their money under the watchful eye of American intelligence, essentially. And those same actors, the FBI and the Secret Service, are part of this public-private partnership housed within the World Economic Forum. It's basically U.S., Israeli, and UK intelligence, plus a lot of big banks and PayPal. Their ambition is to end online anonymity, and with that, also financial anonymity. So we're seeing unprecedented crackdowns on, financial privacy tools, both for cryptocurrency and for regular transactions, and big pushes from all across the internet, really, to have you tie your government-issued ID to what you do online, whether it's your social media account or really anything. And so the goal here is to have, create a completely surveillable system based on biometrics and with money that the government or whoever can directly program and surveil. So programming it means that you can only use the money for what they say you can use it for, and you can only send it to who they say you can send it to. And the goal is to onboard the whole world onto that. And they consistently test this stuff first in a global south. On the global south. So what this article is about is a big effort to essentially wrap up a significant amount of Latin America by focusing at the subnational level, the local level, onto these kinds of systems under the guise of we must decarbonize now.
Yeah.
But really if you look at sort of the fine print, I guess you could say, of this program, the decarbonization funds go toward a specific company that's tied up with this particular group that's trying to build an intercontinental power smart grid from the Americas, and they've been testing their smart grid in poor communities in Latin America, in Los Angeles, actually, in the U.S., and also in Colombia and some other countries, with the idea of having it all tied together and having energy be currency. And the idea is to move away from currency as we know it now and have all these commodity-backed currencies, and that people trade energy or trade carbon credits. And basically, it's complicated. There's a lot of different reasons for why they're moving in that direction. Part of it is because of the insane amount of debt that the world is saddled with. You have to park that debt in certain places. You have to find ways to manage it, right? And so, some of these stable coins are being used for that. Carbon credits are being used for that. Actually, RFK's vice president, Nicole Shanahan, was running or managing a project at Stanford Law that was about using carbon credits to facilitate quantitative easing, which is, the endless money printing by the Federal Reserve. So there's been a lot of, efforts to look at what they're going to do with the debt, and essentially they have to remake the financial system. But they're, making it in a way where it's, completely surveillable and controllable. And these are really the ambitions that the U.S. national security state had right after 9/11 and tried to impose on everybody. Total information awareness, for example, was a program that they tried to enact. And there was a big uproar about it at the time in 2003, 2004, because even the New York Times and stuff knew that it was going to completely eliminate privacy for the average American. And so the ambition of this program was to surveil literally everything, including people's health signals, to prevent pandemics before they can happen. to prevent financial crime before it can happen,
Yeah.
to prevent
Pre-crime.
terrorist attacks before it can happen. It's pre-crime.
Pre-crime.
And Total Information Awareness was recreated as a private company in 2004, right after Congress defunded it, and it's provably Palantir, which is Peter Thiel's company that contracts to every single U.S. intelligence agency. They privatized it because they realized if they can frame it as a private company, people won't complain. People will give their data freely to the private company. So Peter Thiel doesn't just make Palantir, he also makes Facebook. And they build this network of companies. And now Palantir, for years, has been testing predictive policing in urban communities in the United States, really testing it all over the world now. And I'm kind of concerned they're going to make a very big comeback with Trump, because some of the main people in developing those policies for Palantir, when Trump was in office last time, they were very intimately tied up and served in the Trump administration. People like Trey Stevens, for example. And Trey Stevens created a company with the Oculus Rift guy, the VR headset guy, Palmer Luckey, that used to work, that got, thanks to Peter Thiel, sold his company to Facebook, and then got more Thiel funding. They're building the smart wall for Democrats and Trump, because Trump doesn't want an actual physical wall anymore. He's all in on the smart wall. And on a recent campaign stop said we need a biometric entry exit tracking system for everyone. That's how we're going to stop, illegal migration and all of that. And one of his campaign lawyers is going on podcasts saying we need to use biometric face scanning to vote as voter ID. We need to scan our eyeballs.
What do you think of Whitney Webb's assessments? Do you agree that this move from involving carbon credit is up to no good? Is the goal of this propaganda the preservation of the environment? We would love to hear from you in the comment section below. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, please click the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future uploads. Your engagement helps us continue providing valuable content to our audience. Thank you for watching. Until next time, see you in the next video.